Most of us have stayed at home during the pandemic. But have you ever wondered how other people behave? Are more people going out now than when the pandemic started? Where do people usually go? These are just some of the questions that we explored in our data story. Bawal Lumabas, a story on Filipino mobility amidst the pandemic. The data for this presentation is sourced from Our World of Data, Department of Health Data Drop, and the Google Mobility Index. We found out that slowly, people are going out of their homes amidst the pandemic. The lines here represent the percentage change in number of visits broken down by location, namely residential, grocery and pharmacy, parks, workplace, and retail and recreation. The farther away the line is from the baseline, the greater the change in mobility from how it was pre-pandemic. Looking at the red line, which represents the average, we see that mobility was most restricted around April 2020. But since then, people have slowly been going out of their homes to various destinations, with the exception of New Year's Eve and the day before the start of the NCR Plus ECQ. Zooming in, we clearly see mobility recovering in all types of locations. In fact, Filipino mobility to groceries and pharmacies have now exceeded pre-pandemic levels. Now, in talking about community quarantines, there is a distinction between essential and non-essential mobility, with the latter being more restricted. And that begs the question, what kind of mobility is actually recovering? And the answer is non-essential mobility. We see people going out more for shopping and leisure than going out for work. In fact, workplace mobility showed the least recovery among all location types, possibly because a lot of companies have successfully adopted a work from home setting. So, despite the restrictions and lockdowns, non essential mobility has been slowly inching up, and along with it, COVID cases. After the first ECQ and the 2020 holiday season, the noticeably steady increase in non essential mobility was followed by a surge of COVID cases that peaked in August 2020 and early April 2021.
One might think, are there more people going out in regions with high cases? Turns out, no. As you can see here, regions with high COVID cases, such as NCR, have low mobility. This is because mobility restrictions are generally reactions to spikes in COVID cases. Lockdowns were implemented to arrest the already ongoing outbreaks instead of preempting and preventing the occurrence of such. Most COVID cases are clustered in the community quarantine bubbles. For example, even though there are less people going out in NCR, the number of cases may still be high because they are in the same quarantine bubble as Region 3 and 4A. These regions have high mobility. Now, you might be wondering, are Filipinos that hard-headed? We keep on going out amidst the pandemic. Well, relative to our peers, seems not. Actually, Filipinos stay at home more than ASEAN peers. As you can see here, Philippines has been one of the countries in the ASEAN with the least mobility index, even lower than Vietnam and Indonesia, our comparable peers based on GDP per capita. Despite that we stay at home, we still lack other preventive measures. Philippines is included among the countries with the lowest testing per thousands of people and lowest vaccination per hundreds of people. Because instead of these measures, testing and vaccinations, the Philippines mostly implemented prolonged lockdowns to contain COVID cases. As mentioned previously, more people are going outside of their homes, and we're seeing the most improvement in mobility just recently. Where can we possibly attribute that? Well, what we have seen is that more people go outside as vaccinations begin. With the exception of the start date of the recent ECQ, mobility has been steadily going up since the start of the vaccinations. While our progress in vaccinations are still a far cry versus our peers, the vaccinations spur hope and confidence towards the road of the renewed normal. The old normal we once knew, but better. Thank you everyone for listening. We are SLT 13B, and this is Bawal Lumabas, a story on Filipinos' mobility amidst the pandemic.